borrow the boat to cross the river. He has borrowed all our boats. He games our universities, he games our media systems, he games our technology companies, he gets you to write his research papers. He has, with little incremental capital, Harvard University gets billions of dollars of endowment. For $25 million Chinese money, you have a whole cohort of academics there who are singing the emperor's tunes. Incremental. He's just giving the cream, not the main course, not the first course, not the second course, just the mint, after mints. And I think he has borrowed too many boats, and technology is a domain where the boats can be nimble, fast, and before we can respond, he would have already created fait accompli. Fait accompli was not what happened in the Himalayas. Fait accompli is what is happening in technology. We are all being given a fait accompli. Accept this Chinese world and sign on to the Emperor's project. And I think we all need to wake up.
So what is the alternative?
I think Europe has a role, and regulation is not the answer. So I mean, I know that's a good research project, and I know it's a good way to get funding, but I think Europe has to get out of this regulation and bureaucracy mode. It has to be a political actor. You know, politics. Think about politics. Think about protecting interests. It is no longer values. There is no values. Get interests right first. Then we'll go to values. You know, I come to Europe and I have a value nausea. So I think it is time that the middle folks, like Europe, like India, we work together. We understand that what we are really, Europe has to understand we are the front line. The experiment is happening here. But guess what? The $3 trillion Indian economy does not excite the emperor. He wants a $20 trillion market in EU. And you know, when people tell me what is the future of the transatlantic relationship, I don't want it to be a conversation between Beijing and DC. I want Europe to still have a voice in that transatlantic relationship. And I think that is the challenge. That can we move fast enough without waiting for agreeing to a values framework? There is no values framework. There is China and there is a Chinese proposition. If we can disagree with that, respond to it, and then later decide what we want to agree with. So I think an interest-based framework, which is nimble, which is agile, which doesn't want all 200 nations of the United Nations to sign on to it, should be perhaps the first thing we need to do. I like that idea of that AI group of 10. I like these. I like the quote, by the way, Dean. So well done. Heritage has been, promoting that for a long time. I think these nimble coalitions. The multilateralism is never going. The golden age of multilateralism is behind us. Now we are entering the dark age of plurilateralism. We will have to create coalitions of convenience, coalitions of coincidence, and sometimes coalitions because we disagree with someone else. And I think China allows all three of them to play out at the same time. And I think these coalitions are important. I come to Europe and we are still thinking about how can we engage with China? They are a strategic threat. You don't engage with your strategic threat.
But do private...
I still hear this.
Samir, do private companies agree? Because it's one thing as a think tanker to say this, but in tech, I mean, the industry is really important. They can decide that their interests are not...
No, I totally agree. When I say borrow the boat, the first boat they borrowed was your private sector. You are so intent in selling your Mercedes-Benz that you will get them to rule your kingdom. They have borrowed that boat as well. And I think it is time that this, public policy folks, political leaders, the Prime Minister would know, had two options, incentives or sticks. Europe decided to throw the stick, and they keep giving incentives to the private sector. It is now time to use the stick. You have two carrots and stick policy, get into the stick mode now. I think you have to draw red lines. You have to create